The Dominion had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. They had conquered more than 200 star systems. They had crushed rebellions, absorbed entire civilizations, and built an empire that stretched across countless worlds. In all that time, no species had ever refused to bow before them. High Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched his sensor displays with mild curiosity. His patrol fleet of 12 warships had detected something unusual near the border of Dominion space. A single vessel of unknown design was drifting through the void, alone and far from any known trade route. "What do we know about it?" asked his tactical advisor. Sub-Commander studied the readings carefully. The ship is approximately 400 meters in length. Its design does not match any species in our records. The hull shows signs of battle damage and radiation burns. It appears to have survived some kind of violent event before arriving here. Allowed himself a small smile. A damaged ship meant easy prey. Perhaps some foolish species had wandered too far from their home and gotten lost. It would not matter. They would submit to the Dominion like all the others, or they would be destroyed. "Move the fleet into intercept position," he ordered. "Surround the vessel and prepare for boarding." The 12 warships moved with practiced precision. They formed a sphere around the unknown craft, cutting off any possible escape route. Their weapons powered up, creating a web of targeting locks that covered every angle. On the bridge of the USS Vigilant, Captain Jack watched the alien ships take position around his vessel. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his face calm and unreadable. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. "How many ships?" asked. Commander Kate checked her tactical display. 12 vessels, Captain, all armed. They have us completely surrounded." "Weapon status?" Lieutenant Sam Porter looked up from his console. "All systems green. Point defense is ready. Main batteries are loaded and standing by." Nodded slowly. The Vigilant had been through hell to get here. An unstable wormhole had ripped them away from Earth and deposited them in this unknown region of space. The ship was damaged but still functional. His crew was tired but still sharp. They had survived worse situations than this. "Open a channel," said. "Let us see what they want." Ensign Amy worked at the communications station, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Channel open, Captain. I am running their transmissions through the universal translator. It should work, but there may be some delay." A moment later, the main screen flickered to life. His face appeared, his reptilian features twisted into an expression of superiority. His scales were dark green, and his eyes glowed with a faint yellow light. "Unknown vessel," said, his voice cold and commanding. "You have entered the territory of the Dominion. You will identify yourselves immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your destruction." Did not flinch. He had faced threats before. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded ships in battles that would have broken lesser men. A circle of alien warships did not frighten him. "I am Captain Jack of the USS Vigilant," he replied, his voice steady and clear. "We are a vessel of the United Nations Space Command, representing Earth and humanity. We arrived in this region through an accident and mean you no harm. We request peaceful dialogue." Laughed, the sound was harsh and mocking. "Humanity, Earth, we have never heard of your kind, it does not matter. You will surrender your ship and submit to Dominion authority. This is not a request." "I'm afraid I cannot do that," said simply. The laughter died on his face. He was not used to being refused. In 300 years of military service, no species had ever told him no. They begged, they pleaded, they surrendered, but they never refused. "You do not seem to understand your situation," said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "You are 1 ship against 12. You are damaged and alone. You have no hope of victory and no chance of escape. Submit now, or I will reduce your vessel to atoms." Glanced at, she gave him a slight nod. The crew was ready for whatever came next. "High Admiral," said, turning back to the screen, "I understand my situation perfectly, and I am telling you with all respect that the USS Vigilant does not surrender. Not to you. Not to anyone." Stared at the human captain. He searched for signs of fear, for any indication that the man was bluffing. He found nothing. The human's heart rate was steady. His breathing was calm. His eyes showed no panic. This was wrong. This was not how prey behaved. Standing in the corner of the bridge, Observer watched the exchange with growing interest. Was a member of the Galactic Council, assigned to monitor the Dominion's activities in this sector. He had witnessed hundreds of first contact situations. They always followed the same pattern. The weaker species would recognize superiority and surrender. It was simply how things worked. But these humans were different. Could see it in the way their captain held himself, in the way his crew moved at their stations. There was no fear in them. There was something else. Something that looked almost like anticipation. Felt a chill run through his ancient body. He had lived for over 500 years and had seen empires rise and fall. He had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, his instincts were telling him that something unprecedented was about to happen. Made his decision. He would show these humans the price of defiance. "Power all weapons," he ordered. "Target their engines. We will cripple them first and then board them by force. Let them see what happens to those who refuse the Dominion." The fleet began to move. Weapons charged with deadly energy. Targeting systems locked onto the small human vessel. On the Vigilant, watched the enemy ships prepare to attack. He took a slow breath and let it out. "All hands," he said quietly, "battle stations." The lights on the bridge shifted to red. Alarms rang throughout the ship. 340 crew members moved to their positions with the speed and precision of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. They had made their choice. Now they would learn what it meant to threaten a human warship. High Admiral wanted to teach the humans a lesson. He ordered one of his cruisers to fire a warning shot. The vessel moved forward from the formation and released a blast of superheated plasma that streaked through space like a bolt of blue lightning. The shot passed within meters of the Vigilant's bow. It was close enough to scorch the paint from the hull and leave black marks across the metal. Close enough to show the humans exactly what weapons could do. On the Vigilant's bridge, Lieutenant Sam Porter barely looked up from his console. "Near miss off the port bow," he reported. His voice was flat and bored, as if he was reading a weather report. Commander Kate raised an eyebrow. "That was their warning shot, I assume." "Seems like it," Porter replied. "Plasma-based weapon. Impressive heat signature but slow travel time. Our point defense could handle it easily." Captain stood perfectly still at the center of the bridge. He watched the cruiser that had fired the shot. It was moving closer now, preparing for a real attack. The alien commander clearly expected the humans to panic after such a close call. Felt no panic. He felt something else entirely. A cold, clear focus that came from years of combat experience. He had been shot at before. He had lost friends and shipmates in battles that lasted for days. A single warning shot from an alien cruiser did not impress him. "Open a channel to the flagship," he said. Amy made the connection. His face appeared on the screen once more. The High Admiral was smiling now, confident that his show of force had worked. "Have you reconsidered your position, human?" asked. Shook his head slowly. "I have not. But I wanted to give you one more chance to reconsider yours. My people have a long history, High Admiral. We have been fighting wars since before we learned to write. We have developed weapons that can crack planets and strategies that would make your tacticians weep. The USS Vigilant is a product of that history. Every system on this ship exists because we learned, through blood and sacrifice, exactly what it takes to win a fight." Smile faded slightly. "Are you threatening me?" "I am informing you," replied. "I do not want to fight. I want to find a way back to my home. But if you force my hand, I will respond with everything this ship has. And I promise you, High Admiral, you will not enjoy the result." For a long moment, said nothing. He stared at the human captain, trying to read his face, trying to understand what kind of creature would speak this way when surrounded by enemies. Then his pride won out over his caution. No primitive species from an unknown world would lecture him about war. He had conquered civilizations that had existed for millions of years. He would not be intimidated by a single damaged ship. "Destroy their engines," ordered, "now." The cruiser that had fired the warning shot moved into attack position, its weapons charged with a high-pitched whine that echoed through space. The targeting systems locked onto the Vigilance engine section. The gunners prepared to fire. They never got the chance. The Vigilance point defense systems activated in the space between heartbeats. Advanced computers that could process millions of calculations per second identified the threat and selected a response. In 0.3 seconds, the ship's automated targeting had tracked the enemy cruiser, analyzed its armor and shield configuration, and chosen the optimal weapon. A single kinetic interceptor launched from the Vigilance rail gun system. It was a simple weapon, really. Just a rod of solid tungsten about 2 meters long, but it was traveling at nearly 15% of the speed of light. The rod crossed the distance between the two ships in less than a second. It hit the cruiser just below the bridge section, punching through the forward shields as if they did not exist. It continued through 3 layers of armored hull without slowing down. It passed through the reactor core and out the other side of the ship. For one brief instant, the cruiser remained intact. Then the reactor containment failed. The ship exploded in a silent flash of white light that temporarily blinded the sensors of every vessel in the area. When the light faded, there was nothing left. No debris, no escape pods, no survivors, just an expanding cloud of superheated gas where a warship had existed moments before. Chief Engineer Tony Reeves checked his displays and made a note. "That shot used approximately 1.8% of our kinetic ammunition reserves, Captain." Let out a low whistle. "One shot." "One shot," confirmed. He looked at the main screen where the remaining 11 ships had gone completely still. Their weapons were still charged, but no one was firing. No one was moving. No one was even transmitting. The fleet had gone silent. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest stood frozen in place. His tactical displays were screaming warnings at him. His officers were shouting questions and demands, but he heard none of it. He could only stare at the empty space where his cruiser had been. One shot. A single projectile from a damaged alien vessel had instantly destroyed a ship that had survived 100 battles. The weapon had passed through shields and armor as if they were made of paper. The speed and power involved were beyond anything that had ever developed. "High Admiral," Subcommander asked. His voice was uncertain, almost afraid. "What are your orders?" Did not answer. He was doing something he had not done in 300 years of military service. He was questioning whether he could win this fight. Observer stood in the corner of the bridge, his ancient heart beating fast. He had seen weapons of incredible power before. He had witnessed the fall of empires and the death of worlds, but he had never seen anything quite like this. The humans had not attacked first. They had given warnings. They had offered peaceful dialogue. They had done everything possible to avoid violence. But when violence was forced upon them, they had responded with devastating efficiency. Thought about what the human captain had said. A species that had been fighting wars since before they learned to write. A species that had developed weapons capable of cracking planets. If that was true, then they had just made a terrible mistake. They had threatened a predator and expected it to behave like prey. His voice came through the communication channel. It was calm and quiet, without any trace of anger or satisfaction. "High Admiral," he said, "I did not want that to happen, but your ship fired on mine and I was forced to respond. I am asking you now, please stand down your weapons and let us talk. There does not need to be any more death today. Stared at the screen. The human was offering him a way out. After destroying one of his ships, the human was still trying to make peace. What kind of species destroyed their enemies and then asked them to be friends? The High Admiral did not know the answer, but for the first time in his long career, he was beginning to suspect that he had encountered something truly dangerous. Not because the humans were violent, but because they were violent and reasonable at the same time. That combination, realized, was far more terrifying than simple aggression. All ships, he said slowly, hold position. Do not fire unless fired upon. The fleet remained still. The silence continued, and across the void of space, two civilizations stared at each other, each trying to understand what kind of future awaited them. The hours that followed the destruction of the cruiser were filled with tense silence. Neither side moved. Neither side fired. The 11 remaining warships of the Dominion fleet held their positions around the USS Vigilant like wolves circling a creature they no longer understood. High Admiral spent that time studying every piece of data his sensors could gather about the human ship. What he found disturbed him more with each passing minute. Sub-Commander brought him the analysis reports. The human vessel's hull is made of a material we cannot identify. Our best guess is some kind of titanium ceramic composite, layered in a pattern designed to absorb and deflect energy. Our plasma weapons would need sustained fire for several minutes to burn through it. And their weapons? Asked. The projectile that destroyed our cruiser was traveling at approximately 15% of light speed. The kinetic energy involved was equivalent to a small nuclear explosion, and according to their transmission, that shot used less than 2% of their ammunition. Felt his stomach twist. They have more of those weapons. Based on the power readings from their ship, they could fire hundreds of such projectiles before running low. And that may not be their only weapon system. We are detecting energy signatures that suggest they have additional armaments we have not yet seen. The High Admiral sat back in his command chair and tried to make sense of what he was hearing. The human vessel was a destroyer, according to their own classification. A small warship by their standards, yet it carried enough firepower to threaten his entire fleet. What kind of wars had these creatures fought that they needed such power in their smallest combat vessels? Captain's voice came through the communication system, requesting a private conversation. Hesitated, then accepted. He needed to understand these humans, even if the understanding frightened him. His face appeared on a small screen at his personal station. The human looked tired but composed. His eyes were steady and patient. "Thank you for speaking with me," High Admiral said. "I want you to understand something about my people. We did not come here looking for a fight. We were pulled through a spatial anomaly and found ourselves lost in your territory. Our only goal is to find a way home." "Then why did you refuse to surrender?" demanded. "If you wanted peace, why not simply submit to our authority?" Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft but firm. "Because submission is not in our nature. My species evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We faced predators with claws and teeth. We survived ice ages that froze the land for thousands of years. We endured plagues that wiped out half our population. And through all of it, we refused to give up. We refused to bow down. We fought and struggled and clawed our way to survival." He paused, letting his words sink in. "When we finally reached the stars, we brought that spirit with us. We built ships that could withstand the vacuum of space and the radiation of distant suns. We developed weapons that could protect us from any threat. And we made a promise to ourselves that we would never again be at the mercy of forces beyond our control." Listened in silence. He had conquered species that spoke of honor and courage. He had heard countless defeated commanders give speeches about their proud history, but this was different. The human was not boasting or threatening. He was simply explaining who his people were. The Vigilant is a warship, continued. It was built to fight and to win, but more than that, it was built to protect. Every system on this vessel, every weapon, every piece of armor exists because humans learned through centuries of bloodshed what it takes to keep our people safe. We do not seek war, but we are very, very good at it when war finds us. How good? Asked. The question came out before he could stop it. His expression did not change. In our history, we have split the atom and turned that power into weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single blast. We have created biological agents that could wipe out populations across continents. We have built machines that think faster than any living mind and weapons that can strike from orbit with pinpoint accuracy. He let out a slow breath. We have used these things against each other. Humans fighting humans in wars that killed tens of millions of people. We learned, through terrible experience, exactly how much destruction we were capable of. And then we turned that knowledge outward to the stars to protect ourselves from whatever we might find there. Felt a chill run through his scales. You fought wars against yourselves, wars that killed millions. Hundreds of millions, corrected quietly. Over the course of our history, we have killed more of our own kind than most species ever produce. It is not something we are proud of, but it is something we have learned from. Every weapon on this ship, every tactic in my training, every protocol in our military doctrine comes from those lessons. The High Admiral struggled to process this information. They had conquered hundreds of species, but none of them had ever described anything like what the human was saying. Wars that killed hundreds of millions, weapons that could destroy cities. And these creatures had used these things on each other before they ever met an alien species. How many ships does your military have? Asked. Considered the question. The United Nations Space Command operates approximately 4,000 warships of various classes. The Vigilant is one of the smaller vessels in our fleet. 4,000 ships, all of them potentially more powerful than anything they possessed. His mind reeled at the implications. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally. His eyes met his through the screen. "Because I want you to understand that I am not bluffing. I am not trying to intimidate you with empty threats. I am telling you the truth about my people so that you can make an informed decision. We do not want to fight you, High Admiral. We want to go home. But if you force us to fight, we will do so with everything we have. And neither of us will be happy with the result." Sat in silence for a long time. He thought about his fleet, his empire, his 300 years of military victories. He thought about the cruiser that had been destroyed in a single shot. He thought about 4,000 human warships, each one built by a species that had learned the art of war through centuries of killing each other. Finally, he made a decision. "I will not attack you," he said slowly, "but I cannot simply let you go. My superiors will want answers. The Galactic Council will want to know about your species." Nodded. "I understand. Perhaps we can help each other. You want information about humanity. We want information about this region of space and any way we might find to return home. An exchange of knowledge freely given with no threats or demands." It was a reasonable offer. More than reasonable, considering what had just happened. Found himself nodding before he realized he had agreed. "Very well, Captain, we will talk. But I warn you, others may not be as willing to listen as I am." His expression softened slightly. "Then let us hope our conversation convinces them that listening is the wiser choice." The channel closed, leaving alone with his thoughts. He looked out the viewport at the small human ship that had thrown his entire understanding of the galaxy into chaos. What had the universe created out there among those distant stars? And what would happen when humanity finally came to this part of space in force? The High Admiral did not know, but for the first time in his life, he was genuinely afraid to find out. Observer had served the Galactic Council for over 300 years. In that time, he had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. He had watched civilizations destroy themselves through war and greed. He had seen first-contact situations that ended in friendship and others that ended in extinction. Nothing in his long experience had prepared him for humanity. He sat in his quarters aboard the Eternal Conquest, composing a priority report to the Council. His hands trembled slightly as he recorded his observations. This was not something that happened to him. He was old and wise and had seen too much to be shaken by anything, but the humans had shaken him. Initial assessment of newly discovered species, designation, human. He spoke into his recording device. Origin world, Earth, located in an unexplored region approximately 40,000 light-years from Dominion space. Species arrived through an unstable spatial anomaly. Single vessel, classification destroyer, carrying approximately 340 individuals. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The human vessel engaged a cruiser in combat after the cruiser attempted to disable its engines. The engagement lasted less than 1 second. The vessel was completely destroyed by a single kinetic projectile. There were no survivors. Closed his eyes and remembered the flash of light, the sudden silence, the look of shock on his face. This was not a battle, he continued. It was a demonstration. The humans showed exactly enough force to eliminate the immediate threat and then immediately offered to negotiate. They did not press their advantage. They did not attempt to destroy the remaining ships. They simply removed the threat and returned to peaceful communication. He opened his eyes and stared at the wall of his cabin. I have consulted with technical specialists. Based on their analysis, the human vessel possesses technology that exceeds Dominion capabilities in several key areas. Their weapons are faster and more powerful. Their defensive systems are more resilient. Their reactor output suggests energy generation methods we do not fully understand. He let out a slow breath. Most concerning is the fact that this vessel is classified as a destroyer, one of the smaller combat ships in the human military. According to the human captain, their fleet numbers approximately 4,000 vessels of various sizes. If this information is accurate, humanity represents a military force unlike anything we have encountered in the known galaxy. Transmitted the report and waited for a response. It came within the hour, faster than any council communication he had ever received. The message was simple and direct: learn more. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Vigilant, Captain gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. The situation was clear, and it was not good. Commander Kate pulled up the navigational data on the main display. The wormhole that brought us here has completely collapsed. Chief Reeves has been running calculations, and the news is not encouraging. Tony Reeves stepped forward, his face grim. To generate a stable wormhole artificially, we would need more energy than the Vigilant can produce in approximately 10 years of continuous operation. Our reactor simply is not powerful enough. Even if we found a way to boost output, we do not have the exotic materials needed to stabilize the aperture. Sam Porter leaned back in his chair. So we are stuck here. For now, said. His voice was calm but could see the tension in his shoulders. We need to think about this logically. We are alone in unknown space, surrounded by a potentially hostile empire with limited supplies and no support. That is the bad news. He looked around the table at his officers. The good news is that we have the most advanced warship humanity has ever built. We have a crew trained to handle exactly this kind of impossible situation. And we have already demonstrated to the local power that we are not to be taken lightly. Amy spoke up. Captain, I have been monitoring communications. There is a lot of chatter about us. They are scared, really scared. Some of their commanders are arguing for attacking us with their full fleet. Others are saying that would be suicide. What about asked? He seems to be advocating for caution. He is telling his superiors that we are too dangerous to attack without more information. He is also reporting that we have offered to negotiate in good faith. Nodded slowly. Good. Fear can be useful, but we do not want them to feel cornered. Cornered enemies make desperate choices. Pulled up another display. There is something else, Captain. The Galactic Council. According to the data we have gathered, they are a governing body that includes dozens of spacefaring species. They maintain peace between member civilizations and monitor the activities of empires like the Dominion. And they have an observer aboard the flagship, said. Yes, sir. His name is. He has been watching everything that happened. If the Council learns about us through him, it could change the political situation significantly. Considered this. The Vigilant was one ship, alone and far from home, but information traveled faster than starships. If the Council learned about humanity and decided they were a threat, they might unite against Earth. If they decided humans could be useful allies, they might offer help. Everything depended on first impressions. We need to control the narrative, said finally. We need to show these aliens who we really are, not just what we can do in a fight. We need to demonstrate that humanity is more than just a species that builds powerful weapons. How do we do that? Porter asked. Thought for a long moment, then he smiled slightly. We invite the Council observer to visit the Vigilant. We show him our ship, our crew, our culture. We let him see that we are people, not monsters. We answer his questions honestly and openly. And we hope that what he sees is enough to convince the Council that humanity is worth knowing. Raised an eyebrow. That is a risk, Captain. He will learn our capabilities, our weaknesses. He will also learn our strengths, replied. Not just military strengths. He will see how we treat each other, how we solve problems, how we face challenges. He will see the best of what humanity can be. He looked around the table one more time. We are ambassadors now, whether we like it or not. We are the first humans these aliens have ever met. Everything we do, everything we say, will shape how they view our entire species. So we are going to be the best version of ourselves. We are going to show them what humanity is capable of when we are not fighting. Smiled. Should I send the invitation to Observer? Nodded. Do it. And tell him that the crew of the USS Vigilant welcomes him aboard. Tell him we have nothing to hide and everything to share. The message was sent. Within an hour had accepted. The next phase of first contact was about to begin. And this time, it would be fought not with weapons, but with words, ideas, and the simple power of human connection. Hoped it would be enough. Because if it was not, the Vigilant might have to fight its way home through an entire galaxy of enemies. And even with all their firepower, that was not a battle he wanted to face. Observer stepped aboard the USS Vigilant with the careful movements of someone entering a predator's den. He had studied the sensor data. He had watched the destruction of the cruiser. He knew exactly how dangerous this vessel and its crew could be. What he found surprised him. The human ship was clean and well organized, but it was not cold or sterile. There were personal touches everywhere, photographs attached to workstations, small decorations in the corridors, handwritten notes posted on bulletin boards. The vessel felt lived in, like a home rather than a weapon. Captain met him at the airlock with a genuine smile and an extended hand. Had studied human customs before his visit and knew this was a gesture of greeting. He accepted the handshake, nodding the firmness of the human's grip and the warmth of his skin. Welcome aboard the Vigilant, said. We are honored to have you as our guest. Over the next 3 days, was given complete access to the ship. He toured the engineering section with Chief Tony Reeves, who explained the fusion reactor and the power distribution systems with obvious pride. He visited the medical bay, where human doctors showed him their equipment and discussed their treatment methods. He ate meals in the crew mess hall, surrounded by hundreds of humans who talked and laughed and argued about things that seemed to have nothing to do with military matters. He watched combat drills that demonstrated the crew's deadly efficiency. Marines moved through simulated battle scenarios with practiced precision, clearing rooms and neutralizing targets in seconds. But then those same Marines gathered in the recreation area to play games and tell jokes. They trained to kill with perfect discipline, and then they relaxed like ordinary people without any apparent difficulty switching between the two states. This duality fascinated more than anything else he observed. On the second day, he sat with Commander Kate in the ship's small observation lounge. Stars drifted slowly past the windows as the Vigilant maintained its position among the fleet. "How do you do it?" asked. "How do you train yourselves to be so violent and then return to normal life as if nothing happened?" Consider the question carefully before answering. We compartmentalize. We separate the person we are in combat from the person we are in our daily lives. It is not easy. Some of us struggle with it. We have counselors and therapists who help crew members process their experiences, but most humans learn to manage the transition. "Among my people, those who fight are forever changed by violence," said. "They become different creatures, unable to return to peaceful society." Nodded slowly. "That happens to some of us too, but we have learned that the best warriors are not the ones who love violence. They are the ones who hate it but accept it as necessary. They fight because they must, not because they want to. And when the fighting is over, they put down their weapons and return to the people they love." On the third day, was invited to see the ship's memorial wall. It was located in a quiet corridor near the crew quarters, and it displayed the names of human vessels lost in various conflicts throughout history. There were thousands of names, arranged by date and conflict, each one representing a ship and crew that had been destroyed in battle. "Why do you display this?" asked. "Among most species, such a memorial would be hidden away. It would be seen as a record of failure." Captain stood beside him, his expression thoughtful. "We display it as a reminder. These ships and their crews gave everything in defense of our people. We remember them not because we are proud of war, but because we are grateful for their sacrifice. Every time a crew member walks past this wall, they are reminded that freedom has a price. That peace must be protected. That someday they might be asked to pay that same price." Studied the names in silence. So many ships, so many lives, and yet the humans did not seem broken by this history of loss. They seemed strengthened by it, as if each sacrifice had made them more determined to protect what they loved. That evening, requested a private meeting with Captain. They sat in the captain's ready room, a small office adjacent to the bridge. Poured 2 glasses of a dark liquid that he called coffee and offered one to his guest. "I must ask you something," said. "Why do you fight so hard? Why do you build such powerful weapons? Why do you refuse to simply submit to stronger forces?" Sipped his coffee and thought about the question. When he answered, his voice was quiet and sincere. "Because we have learned that the universe does not reward weakness. Every time we let our guard down, something came along to hurt us. Ice ages, plagues, predators, other humans. We learned that survival requires strength and that mercy is a gift you can only give from a position of power." He set down his cup and looked directly at. "We build weapons so that we will never have to use them. We train for war so that we can choose peace. We show our enemies what we are capable of so that they will decide fighting us is not worth the cost. It is not about wanting to destroy. It is about making destruction unnecessary." Absorbed these words. He had lived for over 500 years and had studied countless civilizations. He had seen empires that conquered through fear and others that traded their way to prosperity. But he had never encountered a species quite like humanity. They were capable of tremendous violence but seemed to genuinely prefer peace. They built weapons of terrifying power but used them with restraint. They were aggressive and compassionate, brutal and gentle, all at the same time. "You are a very dangerous species," said finally. Smiled. "Yes, we are. But we are also capable of great kindness, great creativity, great love. We are complicated, we are contradictory, we are human." The next morning, returned to the flagship to deliver his final report. High Admiral had assembled his captains to hear the observers' assessment. They waited in the great conference hall, their faces tense with anticipation. Spoke for nearly an hour. He described everything he had seen aboard the human vessel, the technology, the culture, the people. He explained how the humans trained for war but longed for peace. He detailed their history of violence and their capacity for mercy. When he finished, he looked around the room at the commanders. "The humans are not a species to be conquered," he said. "They are a species to be understood, perhaps, if we are wise, befriended. For if they can do what they did with one damaged warship, I shudder to imagine what they might accomplish with a fleet." The room fell silent. Rose from his chair and addressed his captains. "We will not attack the human vessel. We will offer them a non-aggression pact and provide them with navigational data for this region of space. We will treat them as potential allies, not enemies." Some of the captains objected. They spoke of pride and honor and the reputation of the Dominion, but silenced them with a raised hand. "I have fought for 300 years," he said. "I have conquered worlds and crushed rebellions and destroyed fleets, but I have never met an enemy like the humans. They are different. And sometimes, wisdom requires recognizing when you have encountered something you cannot defeat." The pact was offered, Captain accepted. As the USS Vigilant departed space, escorted by ships that had been sent to destroy it, transmitted one final message to the Galactic Council. "Humanity is coming," he wrote. "Not today, not tomorrow, but someday they will return to this region of space in greater numbers. When that day comes, I hope we will have the wisdom to greet them as friends. For if we face them as enemies, I fear the silence that will follow will be the silence of extinction." The Council received his message without comment. But across the great civilizations of the known galaxy, leaders and commanders and kings began to look toward the unexplored regions of space with new eyes. They had heard about the lone human warship and what it had done. They had learned about the species that built it and the wars they had survived. And for the first time in galactic history, the great powers of the universe felt something they had never experienced before. They felt caution. On the bridge of the USS Vigilant, Captain Jack watched the stars drift past his windows. Somewhere out there, beyond the void, was Earth, was home. He did not know how long it would take to find a way back. He did not know what challenges waited for them in the unexplored regions of space. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity would survive. Humanity would adapt. Humanity would overcome. It was simply what they did. And someday, when they finally returned to this part of the galaxy in force, they would remember the friends they had made and the enemies they had turned into allies. The silence would end, and a new chapter in galactic history would begin.